I went on a vacation to an island with my friends. Only two of us survived it. I still can't fully process this. It all started so brightly. It was supposed to be just some friends having a good time, but it would probably be better if I explained it. Everything started when my best friend at the university, Dave, finally managed to snatch one of those research sponsoring funds. We were trying to get our hands on money this way since last year, when we first heard the rumors about other students basically managing to get a paid-for vacation in the name of science. The idea is simple. You make up a field research trip idea, which sounds reasonable enough to get funded, but basically no one cares about the topic, so you don't have to put in much effort in doing whatever you supposedly have to. And as a result, you got a fun trip with friends and you only have to do about 15 minutes of research. Our group for the trip consisted of 5. Dave, who was a biology student like me, but while I was drawn towards herpetology, he wanted to eventually become an ornithologist. Kathleen and her boyfriend Tom, also biologists. And Chris, a really shy geology student who was a high school classmate of Dave, and our destiny, an island somewhere around the coast of Costa Rica. Our supposed task was to document the flora, fauna, and effects of volcanic activity on the structure of the island. There was some chance that we could find a new species new to science, because new creatures still keep popping up in these parts of the world nowadays. But honestly, I don't think any of us really cared about that part. The plan was to spend 3 days on a route from one end of the island to another, while more or less listing the things relevant to us, which we encounter. And then the remaining 4 days would just be pure fun on the beautiful hidden beach, which just happened to be on that side of the island. Fortunately, Dave was able to drive a motorboat, which spared us so much time of arguing with random local tour guides about prices. After the flight, we just geared up, Googled a boat rental, and the rest is history. The little red motorboat darted through the azure blue water with ease, sometimes getting company from schools of flying fish. Dave stood at the wheel in an extremely stupid-looking captain hat, which he bought at a small gift shop on the airport after we goofed around in it while waiting for our bus to the docks. Tom and Kate were making selfies while I was trying to get a conversation going with Chris with not much success. After a while, I gave up and went to the front to admire the beauty of the ocean. It wasn't too long before the island appeared on the horizon, and as we got closer, it got clear that we made the right choice. It looked like those idealized gift card photos. Oh my god, this is amazing. Dave, I owe you a beer, yelled Tom from the back when he noticed the view. Yeah, told you. Beauty and peace in one place. So, you are sure there won't be anyone here besides us? I asked, as I still couldn't really believe that the place won't be absolutely filled with tourists. I'm pretty sure. The island is currently owned by the state, and since many other ones were already swarmed, they made the remaining only available to researchers and stuff like that. Although I read somewhere that this one was bought by some rich idiot in the 90s, and they built a mansion here to live in with their family. But ended up leaving after like 2 weeks because they couldn't sleep well. There were too many sounds at night, supposedly birds, and they couldn't cope with it. But this also means that there are some buildings and possibly left behind farm animals here, like goats and stuff. Honestly, I doubt that. I mean the goat part. Those fuckers would have already chewed everything down the roots here. Touché. By the time we finished talking, we were basically at the beach of the island. So Tom and Dave docked the boat, and then we grabbed backpacks and joined them on the beach. It was still beautiful. The water at the coast of the island was crystal clear and trimming with life. Small fish swarm around the rocks, and crabs run to the back to the safety of the ocean from the sand as we walk through the lush forest, which started surprisingly close from the beach. A raven-sized black bird with a really long tail jumped deeper into the branches as we approached, while it made a weird clicking sound. Well, seems like someone can start working already. What was that bird guy? Kay asked jokingly. Yeah, we're surrounded like a million plants, and I'm the one who has to work because one of my creatures shows up, answered Dave. But I noticed he was looking kind of surprised. My plants won't fly away, so what was that? Honestly, I don't know. Have you guys seen its beak? It was boxy, but not massive and surprisingly angular. If the beak was bigger, I would say some sort of toucan, but it was way too small. The tail looked like some sort of paradise bird. And have you seen those back legs? It almost looked like they had remiges as well. But that couldn't possibly work. And don't get me started on those talons. That would normally scream some sort of bird of prey for me, but otherwise the body was built nothing like one of those. And it's way too bad at flying to catch anything in the air. I'm surprised to say this, but we might already have a new species. Wow, you're really good at this. I honestly thought it was a crow. Well, thanks. I've had some time to practice. Anyway, we should get going now. Soon after, we entered the lush jungle of the island, not yet knowing about the horrors which lurked in the shadows. It's uncanny how dark these tropical forests are. It wasn't long after noon, and the forest already felt like we were in the early evening. We didn't see the black bird again, but other inhabitants of the island started showing up all over the place. So we didn't have any excuses left to not start working. Dave documented the first sighting of the blackbird, listing it as a toucan after a bit of hesitation. And soon after he found some sort of finch which he was fortunately able to recognize as a known species. Kate found some sort of subspecies of an orchid which she seemed really excited about, while I was able to photograph two anole species. Tom and Chris didn't have much work yet, as they only needed samples which would be sent back to the university and hopefully forgotten about by next semester, when they would have to examine them. So Tom helped his girlfriend documenting her plants, while Chris stayed by Dave's side as he still wasn't too comfortable with the others he didn't know. The following hours went by uneventful until we found a freshwater creek deep in the forest. We decided to set up our camp beside it, and That's when we found the second sign of our awaiting doom. As I was setting up my tent, Dave yelled at me from the steam bank. "Hey Meg, I found something for you." "Okay, I'm coming." I tied the rope I was working on and I walked towards Dave. The steam created a small clearing in the forest, just enough to the last rays of sunshine to pierce through the thick canopy. The golden light illuminated something in the mud. Footprints. I could immediately tell they were from a crocodilian, but something was off. There weren't any body-tail drag marks. Even when a croc lifts its body while walking or running, its tail will leave a visible mark on the ground, sometimes even messing up the footprints. But there weren't any of them here. And the other thing was that the creek seemed far too small to house a creature with the size the footprints suggested. In fact, that thing had to be gigantic, even for a crocodile. "So, what do you think?" asked Dave as I was measuring the footprints. "Well, we certainly have a big fella somewhere on this island. Do you know if this creek creates a pond? He must be living there." As far as I know, there isn't any lakes on this island." "Okay, that's really weird. I mean, there is no way an animal this size lives in this creek. This wouldn't even be enough for a dwarf caiman, and based off of these marks, this thing has to be at least the size of a saltwater croc." "Wait, do you think some idiot dumped their pet here? That would explain how it can be there without a pond. A saltwater croc can hunt in the ocean besides occasionally catching whatever lives on this island, and it can come up here to drink. I mean, this is your subject, but it seems pretty reasonable. But if this is the case, we better keep an eye out for it. I don't want to support its diet. Yeah, we should tell the guys as well." Surprisingly, no one was happy about the possibility of us sharing the island with a gigantic crocodile. But it didn't cause too much tension either, as we were now relatively far from the shore where we would have more of a chance of encountering it. Otherwise, the night went on pretty good. Chris finally started warming up to us, and after some chatting, Tom pulled out a pack of Cards Against Humanity from his backpack, which, in my opinion, is one of the best games for a bunch of half-drunk young adults. It was fun for a while, but then things started getting weird. At first, things started getting quiet. The crickets and cicadas started going silent for minutes. Some frogs kept croaking for a while, but they soon shut up as well. Then, after around 10 minutes of nearly complete silence, long, high-pitched calls started echoing through the forest. They were like those really sad and lonely-sounding bird calls. I'm sure you know the type, and the calls were coming from all around the island. At this point, we stopped playing and curled up beside each other by the fire. I'm pretty sure Kate was slightly shaking as Tom cuddled her tightly. "Dave, do you know what the hell this is?" asked Chris while he stared deep into the dark jungle. "I honestly have no idea. This is unlike anything I've ever heard." Right after he said this, the cacophony of the cries got silenced by a long, excited whistle. Some other answered it, and then finally, everything went quiet again. A few minutes passed, and the cicadas started chirping, and the world around us suddenly felt much more welcoming again. Tom let go of Kate and we slowly started to make our way back to our previous seats and chatter again. But just as we were getting comfortable, some bushes by our camp started shaking crazily, and moments later, a goat jumped into the light of the fire just to race through the equipment we had laying around and then disappear into the jungle on the other side. We froze for moments as our brains tried to process what just happened, and at last, I broke the silence. Okay, I guess there are goats here after all. Yeah, but this is getting way too uncanny. I know how much you worked for this, Dave, but can't we just leave early? Asked Kate. What do you mean by uncanny? Well, for one, I don't want to hear those birds ever again in my life. Now I understand why those people who bought the island left. The second thing is, although I don't know much about animals as you guys, that goat was clearly being chased by something, and there has to be a massive predation here because I didn't see any chewed plants. And for an animal as notorious about eating everything as goats are, there have to be a stable population control for them to not eat every plant on this island. And I don't think Miguel's crocodile alone would be enough for that. So there's probably some more terrestrial carnivores here as well. And overall, don't you all have a feeling that things just don't line up somehow? I mean, the first animal we see is a bird, which Dave, who can usually tell even the subspecies from something like a blurry picture of a beak, couldn't even identify. And then I find two orchids, which very strongly resembles a genus thought to went extinct around the last ice age. And then Mig finds some footprints which are from an animal that shouldn't be here by any means. And then birds again, which, again, Dave can't identify by sound. I would argue with you, but honestly I can't. What do you guys think? I mean, usually I'm with her, and this is no exception, answered Tom. Yeah, as much as I like the idea, everything here is starting to really creep me out. Chris? I can't really add anything, but I think we should go as soon as possible as well. Okay, then I'll try to figure something out, but we have to stay at least one day more. The deal with the boat rental was them taking the boat to the other side of the island by the end of the week, so I'll have to contact them somehow and address the change of plans. The thing is, the foliage here absolutely blocks the signal, so I think next day we should try to head back to the beach. We all agreed on that, and I think at this point everyone was relieved to leave the island, so we started chatting about random things again, like how we should try something like this again, and what we will say about the reasons of why we left early. This went on for like half an hour before something started happening again. The forest didn't go silent, but the sounds changed. The leaves rustling, bushes shaking as if something moved their branches. I started checking behind my back constantly, staring into the pitch black jungle. I felt like we were being watched, and as I looked into the faces of others, I knew that I wasn't the only one feeling like this. It was like being a deer grazing on a forest clearing, while you know the wolf pack lurks around you, somewhere between the trees. But no matter how fast we looked to the direction of the sounds, or flashed our lights into the night, we couldn't catch a glance of anything. At last, Dave broke the silence. Guys, I think we should go to sleep. This day was tiring and I think we're getting paranoid. It's probably just other goats or something. Nobody seemed to have an issue with the idea, so we wished each other good night and finally went to sleep. I don't know how much later, but I woke up to some rumbling just outside the tents. I slowly crawled towards the front and peeked out on a little hole created by the badly closing zipper. The night was dark, but clear. Our fire died long before, as everyone was too tired to keep it up, so the only light was the moon flickering through the dark leaves, creating a mosaic pattern on the ground. Something stood in the shadowy clearing, seemingly sniffing the remains of the fire, and, as if it heard something I could not, the creature lifted up its body, giving me a somewhat cleaner look of what it truly is. It looked like a large bird, around like the size of a lion. Its beak seemed long and boxy, just like Dave said the little one's face, which we encountered on the shore, looked like. I couldn't make out any more details in the dark, and moments later, the bird disappeared into the bushes, leaving my still awakening brain in confusion. After nothing happened for minutes, I climbed back into my sleeping bag and decided to tell Dave about the new bird in the morning, which I completely forgot about by then. The rest of the night went on without anything weird happening, but we still woke up relatively early. All of us were still too anxious about the previous night. After we packed our stuff, we decided that we might as well try to collect some more samples on the way back, because it can't hurt to have at least some documentation about the trip. So we were moving kind of spread out in the forest back towards the beach. The island seemed a lot nicer than the day before. Birds were singing, and this time Dave was able to identify most of the sounds. And the morning sun made the forest somewhat brighter, so we were able to see further away. I think this was the thing which caused us to move further and further away from each other, up to the point where we couldn't see anybody, and only had a rough assumption about where they are. I just finished collecting a fragmentary snake shed when I heard Kate yelling from somewhere to the left. "Guys, come quick, you have to see this." I got up and started walking towards the sound. The leaves were rustling somewhere in front of me, and I assumed it's Tom running to his girlfriend. After a few meters, I got to a clearing. Then I saw Kate standing in front of a bird just like the one I saw the night before around our tents. Except now, in the light, I noticed that it doesn't really look like a bird that much. Sure, it's had feathers all over its body, and weird wing-like structures, but instead of a beak, it had a face structure like a monitor lizard, and as I observed further, I noticed that there were claws under the wing feathers. Its tail also didn't look like a bird's tail. It seemed like as if it had bones and muscle underneath the feathers. And not only the feathers are like a normal bird, and overall the shape of the creature seemed familiar somehow. I was trying to recall where could I have seen that shape, and then it suddenly hit me. A movie scene which I saw countless times in my childhood. Two children hiding in a kitchen, terrified, while a predator is lurking outside. And then, after it looks through a small window of the door, its breath making it cloudy, it slowly opens it, an agile reptile, with this exact shape, of course. It didn't have any feathers, and it was bigger than this thing, because this one's head was only around Kate's stomach, but the shape was the same. The thing standing in front of Kate was a dinosaur, a velociraptor to be exact. I focused so much on the creature that I didn't even notice when the other guys arrived. I only realized that I was standing beside Tom when Kate turned to him with a smile. "Look at this little guy." I was sampling, and then he just appeared in front of me. He's so friendly. "Babe, are you sure this is a good idea? Shouldn't you stay away from it? And do we even know what it is?" I was about to tell them what I came up with, but Chris was faster. "I don't want to interrupt you guys, but I think this is a Deinonychus, which is a dinosaur. a sort of raptor to be exact, and it should be dead like 100 million years ago. Kate's eyes widened, but she still stood by the dinosaur. But he is so social. I bet we can take him with us. It'll be a sensation. The whole trip will be worth it. Look, he even lets me pet him. And then she reached out to the creature's head. The pupils of the raptor constricted as the hand got closer, and then it snapped. It was as fast as a striking snake as it grabbed Kate's hand and dragged her to the ground. Kate screamed and fought as the creature started dragging her into the forest. Tom rushed out from the bushes, but 5 other dinosaurs appeared from the other side of the clearing, and 3 of them stood in his way. The other 2 helped the first one drag Kate into the darkening shadows of the jungle, while the remaining surrounded Tom and attacked him. At this point, Dave and I snapped out of our frozen state and ran at him, kicking the beast off of his body. They let out terrible screeches as their bodies fell to the ground, and then got up and disappeared into the forest. Tom tried to get up, but one of the raptors managed to bite deeply into his left leg and he collapsed. He tried again immediately, but that time he managed to get up and started limping towards the forest. Tom, wait, where are you going? Dave ran after him and put his hand on Tom's shoulder. We can't leave her. We need to go now. Calm down. No one wanted to leave her, but you can't go in this shape. You will collapse again after like 5 meters, and we need some weapons as well. I'll be fine. Just bring me a shirt from my backpack. We can use that to stop the bleed. As for weapons, where's Kate's bag? She usually carries a big-ass machete for cutting down some saplings. Here it is, shouted Chris from the other side of the clearing. I have a knife as well, but it won't do much, I said, as I pulled out the old hunting knife from my backpack. It turned out that Dave also had a knife, so we armed ourselves and then cut one of Tom's shirts to tie it on his leg. As we were doing this, the forest around us busted into millions of sounds. The calls from last night, mixed with screeches and whistles, and then from one direction, human screams. After we finished the bandage of Tom's injury, we started running towards the sounds, with him limping behind us. We ran under the shifting shadows of the forest, blinded by light for moments just to enter the darkness again. At some point, a figure appeared in front of us under the canopy. A Deinonychus. It was sitting on something. Dave threw his knife at the dinosaur, but it ducked, and the knife flew into the bushes behind it. Then the raptor looked at us and let out a scream exactly like Kate's. Then it stood up from the chump it was sitting on and ran into the forest before we could do anything. We looked at each other in silence, and then Dave went to find his knife. What should we do now? How will we know which direction she's really in if those fuckers can mimic her voice? Asked Tom hysterically after Dave came back with the knife. I might have an idea, said Chris. We shouldn't follow the screams, because they are probably doing it to lure us away from her. Instead, we should try to locate where most of their normal sounds are coming from, and that way we can probably find the pack. And also, I don't think we should run. We can't do anything if we exhaust ourselves, and they clearly didn't want to kill her immediately, because then they would have done it on the spot, so we probably won't be late. Probably? That will make a great grave sign. This girl is still alive because we probably weren't too late to save her. Oh wait, never mind, we were. How do you even know what to expect from these things? Tom, calm down. He's right, said Dave. Tom eventually agreed with the plan, and after locating where the sounds were coming from, we started walking towards them. As we were walking, I turned to Chris. You never answered Tom. How do you know this much of these Deinonychus? How did you even know what they are? I thought they were velociraptors. Didn't you guys have a paleontology subject? No. Weird. I could have sworn Dave once said that you did. Anyway, we did have it, and the guy who taught it was obsessed with raptors. The lessons were basically about dromaeosaur classification and hypothetical behavior. I swear if we didn't hear the story of why Jurassic Park velociraptors are oversized Deinonychus in reality for 1,000 times, then we didn't even hear it once, so basically that's why. No. The lessons were basically about dromaeosaur. The lessons were basically about dromaeosaur classification and hypothetical behavior. I swear if we didn't hear the story of why Jurassic Park velociraptors are just oversized Deinonychus in reality for 1,000 times, then we didn't even hear it once. So basically, that's why. Oh, I see. After this conversation, we continued our trip in silence. The screams around us eventually got louder, echoing from closer and further between the branches. At one point, we even heard a clean "help," and Dave had to hold back Tom, telling him multiple times that what we heard wasn't his girlfriend. But eventually, we got closer to the calls. At some point, the trees around us started to thin out, and eventually we noticed that we were walking on a path. It was grown in with weeds and filled with holes, but it was still there. As we followed it further, a huge dark shape appeared between the trees. We were heading towards the mansion. It was a huge old building, taken back by nature. Small trees were growing from the empty windows, and vines run all over the walls, racing for the sunlight. Orchids were blooming on the roof. Their red flowers made the roof tiles look like they were sprayed with blood. We were so focused on the building that we only noticed the skeleton when Chris silently pointed it out. It was laying beside the trail. The skull was a bit away from the rest, and moss slowly took over it as its empty eyes stared into the sky above. The rest were really fragmentary. Apart from the rib cages and the pelvic bone, only half a leg and 2 arm bones were left. Well, looks like the first owners didn't really leave after all, said Dave. No one answered. At this point, the calls filled everything around us. They were coming from behind the house. We quickly formed a plan. The overgrown remains of a hedge around the house provided us with great cover, so we could take the raptors by surprise. Despite his injury, Tom insisted on taking the machete, and since he stopped limping by this point, we allowed him. Dave and I took the other two knives while Chris's job was to look out for possible dangers coming from behind us. After this, we split up. Chris stayed at the front of the house. From there, he will have a good covering of the area behind us, but we will still be able to hear him if anything happens, and we'll be able to run into the building to be in relative safety. Tom went to the left. He will cut through the unsuspecting beast to get to Kate, while Dave and I distract them. After everyone got to their supposed place, Dave and I peeked out from the bushes to get a better picture of the situation. There were around 30 Dionyscus in the backyard, all centered around Kate. She wasn't in good shape, but at least she was still alive. 4 raptors held her limbs, keeping her on the ground, while a 5th one placed its leg on her face, with its giant sickle claw millimeters away from Kate's eye. The message was clear: if she screams or tries to escape, the eye will go. Despite the raptors seemingly not wanting to cause too much harm in Kate, her arms were covered in bite marks, and her hair seemed really messy, and maybe even some of it was missing by the looks of it. While the 5 dinosaurs held her hostage, the other ones around her faced the forest and sometimes let out loud hissing noises. Before we could run out of the bushes, we saw the reason of the hisses. Something was slowly walking out from the shadows. A large, elongated jaw appeared, followed by a scaly body. The creature resembled a crocodile, with the head somewhere between a regular croc and a T-Rex. It walked on 4 legs, but unlike a normal crocodile, its legs were fully under its body, the way a mammal's anatomy works. As I stared at the beast, memories formed in my mind. After I became a teen and started to figure out what I want to do with my life, dinosaurs never really interested me anymore, but since reptiles did, I usually got a bunch of articles sent by my friends which covered either dinosaurs or extinct reptiles, and I was always interested in crocodilians. That was the reason I knew about Barinasuchus, a gigantic land crocodile which ruled the earth long after the dinosaurs were gone. In the so-called age of mammals, the beast, which was now walking towards one of my friends, right in front of my eyes. I snapped back to reality as Dave ran out of the bush beside me, yelling at the raptors. I followed as fast as I could. Then we stopped right in front of the pack, heads turned toward us, followed by some surprised chirps and angry hisses. Over the heads of the dinosaurs, I saw Tom emerging from the other side and walking silently to his first victim. The Dionyscus soon collapsed without a sound. It seemed like our plan was working. The crocodile stopped as the noises around it changed, and since I saw it was getting nervous, I figured it would soon retreat back into the jungle. The raptors didn't really understand what's happening either. They didn't want to attack us for some reason, but they slowly got closer, with their jaws snapping in the air in our direction. Tom was still making his way towards his girlfriend. In the next moment, everything fell into chaos. The Barinasuchus had enough, as one raptor accidentally backed into it and let out a loud bellowing sound, and then snapped at the dinosaur. The Dionyscus managed to escape the giant jaws at the last second with an incredible jump, but this action broke the concentration of the others. An angry scream echoed in Tom's direction as the dinosaurs noticed the death coming from behind them. In the next moment, we saw him disappear under a mass of feathers, claws, and teeth. Around this time, we got our own problem. one raptor lunged itself at us, only missing Dave by inches. We tried to cover each other's backs as the pack circled around us, cutting into the appearing noses, while we were all busy with saving our lives. The dinosaurs which held Kate hostage fled the scene. As the clearly annoyed Croc bust into the field, pushing everything over in its way, Kate managed to get up and start running towards Tom. I don't know where she still got enough strength after being pulled across half of the island. As the raptors notice the giant crocodile on the loose, they start fleeing the scene. I didn't really understand, as the pack would surely have been enough to bring it down. For some reason, they seemed to avoid every confrontation with it. As Kate ran towards Tom, she lifted a branch from the ground and tried to knock off the last remaining raptor from his body. I don't know how it was possible at this point. Tom was still moving as the Deinonychus rolled off him with a huge chunk of meat in its mouth, leaving only a bloody mess in where Tom's neck used to be. He lifted his arm with one last burst of energy and tried to point behind Kate's back, but by this point it was too late. The Barinasuchus, as at this point there weren't much other creatures left in the backyard, the Croc selected its next target. Kate turned. In the next moment, a gigantic jaw snapped around her waist, and the crocodile slammed her body head first into the ground. She was dead immediately, at least I hope so, as after this, her body snapped into two halves. Her legs fell onto the ground, only the pants keeping them together, while her torso disappeared into the mouth of the beast. Another bite, and her head was rolling on the ground, until it got stopped by the body of her late boyfriend. By this point, only 3 Deinonychus remained in the field, and they were all circling me and Dave. As the crocodile started sniffing around again, they fled as well, one by one, until the last one. It was fast. It turned from us, and as our bodies loosened, it turned back and snapped its jaws, only to flee again. The only difference was this time, it was carrying Dave's left wrist in its mouth. Dave screamed. The Barinasuchus turned its head towards us, and the next moment, we heard yelling coming from the front of the house. "Help! Guys, please!" We ran. I don't know how Dave didn't faint, but he kept up behind me. The shock of seeing his friends torn apart probably made his brain too numb to register the pain. Fortunately, the Barinasuchus seemingly decided that we weren't worth the trouble, since it didn't follow us. But no matter the reason, we were able to race to the front, where a Deinonychus was sitting on Chris's body, tearing chunks of meat and organs from his open chest. It looked at us, then the bloodstained jaws opened, and a perfect replica of Chris's voice screamed at us, "Guys, please, please." Then the raptor jumped off of the body and ran into the darkening jungle. It was a lot later, but we somehow managed to get to the beach. We made a bandage on Dave's arm for his shirt and lit a small fire, hoping that it would keep the creatures away. Either it worked, or the changed relationship with their crocodilian overlord made the raptors too busy, because even though we heard lots of screeches and calls, not a single one appeared on the beach. At the end, Dave managed to contact the ship rental, and after explaining that we need urgent help, We got assured that a motorboat with a doctor is on its way to us. As we were waiting, one last question formed in my tired brain. Dave, how exactly did you manage to get this trip? Beaver offered it. Beaver? Were you out of your fucking mind? Beaver offers something and you accept it? Hold your horses, please. I know he hates us, but honestly, I don't think he would have refused it either. Like, would you thought that he hates us so much that he wants us dead? Or I don't know, maybe he just wanted us to sleep in shitty tents for a week while being eaten alive by mosquitoes. Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sorry. Beaver's real name was Gregor Smith, but since he had a rather unfortunate face structure, basically all students, and I'm pretty sure most other professors as well, referred to him this way. He taught ecology at the uni, which would have normally interested me, but his lessons were unbelievably boring. He hated most of his students, but he had it out for me and Dave, especially since he had a habit of messing up animal species real bad, and we corrected him several times during lessons. Tom and Kate probably didn't rank as high on the hate list as us, but since we hang out together most of the time, they probably became devils in Beaver's eyes as well. After hours of waiting, the lights of the motorboat cutting through the night felt like a godsend at last. As I'm writing this, we are on our way back to the mainland. Dave got a better bandage on his hand, and for now, the danger was over. While my scratch and bite marks got disinfected, I couldn't rest. I still don't know if it's over. You know, sooner or later we'll have to tell somebody what happened to the 3 other people who were with us. And for some reason, I don't think the police will believe that they got eaten by dinosaurs. On the other hand, if Beaver really wanted us dead, then how will he react if he finds out that we survived? And how did he know about the island and its inhabitants? There's too many unanswered questions. My mind wanders as I drift off into sleep.